I've been in senior care since the age of 16. It's been 22 years for me in the industry. Currently, my days are spent with a technology team working on value-based care for home health and assisted living. I'm here to talk about engaging youth. And I love that Jacqueline kicked us off with the understanding that the younger generations actually do care. And what I want to impart to you is, what if someone would have put in front of me at age 16 to 22, I would have gone into housing and care. But there wasn't a clear career path in that, and so I didn't choose it. This is a study, some results from Carnegie Mellon. 3 female students came to me and said, one of them is the daughter of an investor, and she's our VP of engineering. And her daughter is 22 years old. And they went to their peers and they said, would you work in elder care? And they asked all sorts of questions. And I'm going to get to the heart of what we found. But their first call to me, they said, wow, good news, Sierra. 97% of students know that they can have a career in elder care. And I thought, wow, that's even a question. 3% didn't even know. So when they got asked that question, they didn't even know how to look at it on their survey. So of the 100, we had like 87 people participate in this study. What we learned is that 78% are already actively volunteering, not in nursing homes, but in their communities. And 78% actually want to volunteer for you. And I'll talk more about that in a bit. Some of their responses, now everything was optional. Yes, no, that's all we wanted them to fill out. But they actually wrote in, and I believe they wrote in because they had a sense of guilt and maybe even some shame for not wanting to work in this industry. And some of the takeaways, I'm not qualified. That came up a lot. Right? This is entry-level positions. They don't need to be qualified, but for some reason they think they need to be qualified. So they don't even know that you're going to help them be qualified. They don't have time or transportation to get there. But the one that really stuck out to me, and we saw it more than once, is that one young woman, and she wrote more than this paragraph, and I just took this directly, didn't even change her spelling, but she is a lesbian, and she was really concerned that she would be judged by old people, and maybe even pushed away. And from my experience at 16, when I first worked in a senior housing community, it was customary for men to grab my butt, call me sugar, honey, baby, never my first name. And when I went to the administrator, she said, that's just the way it is. You just deal with it. And I thought, all right, I'll just deal with it. Well, I got to this response in the survey, and I got so angry that this 18-year-old man thought, you'd have to pay me double to come inside of one of your homes. Now, these are Carnegie Mellon students. Again, 48% are already working mostly on campus. So, and only 35% are paying for their own education. Right, so I paid for my own education in my undergrad. I have a degree in computer science and geographic information systems. And I primarily put myself through school by serving elderly women in their home. And then later found more women to help me do that. So what we learned is that 5%, less than 5, actually want to work in our industry, period, home care or senior living. Now these are 18 to 22-year-olds. But 78%, they all want to volunteer for you. And for some of you, you're probably like, what a hassle, right? Like, not all help is great help sometimes. But that leads us to, but how do we really engage with youth? Because we have such a huge gap. This was on a napkin after I was eating a burrito. And I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but this is from the company Chipotle. And I thought, I remember reading it, and I couldn't I couldn't understand, why is this on every napkin? Why is it on every paper bag that's going out the door? It's a very clear career pathway if you want to, as they say, roll with them, because they're rolling burritos. But look at what career you could have if you're 16 to 22. In 4 years, you could have stock in their company. This program has been really successful, even despite Chipotle's issues that they've had with some of their, with quality control of their food. One great takeaway about Chipotle is that these 13 characteristics that you see here, they believe these characteristics to be authentic. So think about this. Can you fake really being respectful? Can you fake any of these things? This is where they start their interview process, and they tell you within 24 hours you will know if you're going to get hired or not. And they put these in front of you and they say, which ones really jump out to you? And for care, I would go one step further here. I would ask, and this is what I did, I grew my team. I had a home care agency in Bloomington, Indiana. I grew it to 50 employees, and we hovered there for about 10 years. And I would always ask them, define care. What does care mean to you? Because that's what they're doing for you. They're going in those doors, they're walking right into the home and at the bedside of the elders, and they're there to provide care. If you give them, hey, this is what care means to us, that's not really going to mean much to them. But if you ask in their interview, what does it mean to you, and you refer back to that throughout the lifetime of them being on your staff, you're going to be part of that person's growth. Right? So young people tend to ask a lot of questions, which is probably why volunteering can seem pretty overwhelming for a lot of you. At 16, when I worked in the first state-assisted home that I worked in, I realized there were no really young people there. Strangely, the other kids that I knew that told me about the job opportunity were volunteering. And the first question I asked, and I couldn't stop asking, was, why are there so many pills? And I asked this because this really beautiful gentleman, Fred Ledbetter was his name, had Parkinson's so bad. He had been mostly in this position shaking, it kind of like he was reaching out to you, but he had lost the ability to verbally speak. And when I said, hi, Fred, how are you today? And I put my hand on his back, and I felt this golf ball size knot behind his scapula. And I just gently rubbed it, and he just took a deep breath and stopped shaking. I thought, wow. So I went back to see Fred that evening at the end of my shift, and I just gave him a 10-minute light massage on his back, no shaking. So I worked 3 nights a week. I did this all 3 nights because I thought, wow, he's not shaking. And after 2 or 3 weeks of this, he was very excited to see me. And a nurse had caught him, unfortunately, throwing away his medicine because he didn't feel like he needed it anymore. And he was like, oh. He was actually able to walk with his arms down a little bit, his head up. And I got called into the administrator's office because they thought maybe I had taken his drugs at night. And because everyone knew we had this strong, I went to see him on a regular basis. So I'm sitting in her office, and I said I would never take his drugs, but I don't understand why he needs to take so many. And she said, every word was just compliance, compliance, compliance. And from that moment forward, I became just like all the 78%. I just wanted to volunteer. I really didn't want to be part of that anymore. And this is a cutie named Anna. Anna's a lot like Fred Ledbetter. At 87, she said, I'm really sick of taking medicine. I'll try acupuncture. I've tried all these things. And then she met a yoga teacher. And her yoga teacher helped Anna go from that to this in less than a year. And so I tell you this story because what really pushed me into home care was the freedom to be able to do these kinds of practices with the elderly. And this is what young people are gravitating towards. More than 80 million Americans are practicing yoga right now. And it works. Some of it's crazy, absolutely. but some of it's pretty amazing. So I bring you back full circle to this element of what can you really take away from, I think is a great example in the workplace. When young people come to you, what do you have for them? If you know they're going to be with you for 3 months or 90 days or 180 or maybe a year, because that's what we see mostly, I don't know that that's turnover as much as, oh, okay, I understand that's how long this person's going to be with me. How can we make that relationship great for both of us? But if you really want young people to stay part of the game, this is what they need to see. What's my beginning, middle, and maybe even I can go beyond. There's no limit here, right? Because this industry is expanding. A lot of you are opening so many new facilities in the next 10 years. If you start engaging young people with really being the future of their community, being leaders in their community, then their friends are going to join in, and their families, and they're going to want their grandparents to age in one of your facilities. So this question, I invite you to answer for yourself, maybe even discuss it with others, but how do you define care? A simple definition. Don't make it complicated. And I encourage you to go in with your staff and ask them, because you don't really, like I said, want them to give your style of care if it's not right for them. In closing, I would love to, I know I'm standing between you and this door and getting into some fresh air, but I'd love it if you could just take 5 deep breaths with me. And this is how we start every session at NurtureCo and how I've trained caregivers for the last 20 years. It starts with big belly breaths. So let's take just 5 breaths of reset as you go back into your meetings. And notice if you're resistant. These very small, simple things like our breath, which is the way that we come into this world and the way we go out. I was very surprised when I first taught an elderly woman to breathe deeply. She told 20 of her friends, and then they wanted to do Tai Chi, and then they wanted yoga at their senior living facility, and then it just escalated. And then we see more and more people like Anna. So thank you, Michael, for this opportunity. And just to tell you about NurtureCo, right now we're focusing on home health and assisted living, and we put care first. So it is a mobile-first platform that really we're the API to the caregiver. And if you are in home health and want to talk more about that, please come see me. Thank you.